The Tuesday morning sun, usually so cheerful through my kitchen window, felt cold. My phone buzzed. Sophia's name flashing across the screen. Honey, I answered, already anticipating the wedding update she'd promised. Mom, she began, her voice hesitant. Marcus and I have decided to keep the ceremony really small, just immediate family. My heart skipped a beat. Oh, I managed, trying to keep my voice even. How small is small? Sophia's paws stretched, filled with an awkward silence that spoke volumes. Well, she finally said, we've decided it's best if you don't attend the actual ceremony. The words hung in the air, sharp and cold like icicles. My breath caught in my throat. I don't understand, I stammered, the cheerful yellow of my kitchen suddenly feeling garish and oppressive. You don't want me at your wedding? The question felt absurd, impossible. It's not that we don't want you there, Mom, Sophia quickly corrected, her tone laced with a forced lightness that grated on my nerves. It's just with the venue change and everything, things are a bit cramped, and we want to keep it intimate. I gripped the edge of the counter, the smooth granite cold against my palm. The venue change. Sophia, we finalized the venue months ago, the one overlooking the coast, the one I booked and put a deposit on. Yes, well, things change, she replied, her voice tight. We've found something smaller, more us. The implication hung heavy in the air, unspoken but clear. I wasn't them. I wasn't part of their us. Sophia, I began, my voice trembling slightly. I've been planning this wedding with you for a year. I've helped with everything, from the dress fittings to the caterer, even down to the personalized napkins. I've even covered most of the expenses. There, I'd said it. The truth I'd held back, the silent contribution that had slowly emptied my savings account, the sacrifice I'd made without a second thought because it was for my daughter's happiness. A long silence followed. I could almost hear Sophia's internal struggle on the other end of the line. Finally, she sighed. Mom, she said, her voice softening slightly, I know you've done a lot, and we appreciate it, truly. But Marcus and I want a simple, relaxed wedding, and well, you can be a bit much sometimes. The word stung, a slap disguised as a gentle caress. Much, I echoed, feeling a chill spread through me despite the warm morning sun. Yes, Mom, Sophia said, her voice taking on an edge I rarely heard. You know how you get. Stressed, opinionated. We just want to avoid any drama. Drama. As if I was the one creating drama. As if I was the problem. So, the reception, I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Of course, you're invited to the reception, Mom, Sophia replied, her tone regaining some of its earlier lightness. That's where the real party is anyway. The real party, the afterthought, the part where I could mingle with distant relatives and pretend everything was fine while my daughter exchanged vows with the man she loved, without me, right? I managed. My voice choked. The after-party. Of course. I have to go, Mom, Sophia said quickly. Lots to do. We'll see you at the reception. And just like that, the line went dead. I stood there, phone still clutched in my hand, the dial tone buzzing in my ear like a mocking laugh. The cheerful yellow of my kitchen seemed to mock me too, a cruel reminder of the happy future I'd envisioned for my daughter. a future that now seemed to exclude me. I stared out the window, watching a robin hop across the lawn, oblivious to the earthquake that had just shattered my world. My daughter didn't want me at her wedding. The wedding I'd poured my heart and soul and savings into. A wave of nausea washed over me. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. I had sacrificed so much for Sophia, always putting her needs first. And this was my reward: banishment, exclusion. A quiet resolve began to simmer beneath the surface of my shock and hurt. This was more than just a wedding. This was about my life, about the choices I'd made, the sacrifices I'd accepted without question. Perhaps, just perhaps, it was time to start making different choices. Perhaps it was time to focus on the one person I'd consistently neglected. Myself. The thought, small and hesitant at first, began to grow, a tiny seed of defiance taking root in the barren landscape of my disappointment. I had a feeling this was just the beginning. I had a feeling things were about to change. The cordless phone felt cold against my ear. "Sophia, I don't understand," I stammered, the linoleum tiles of my kitchen floor suddenly seeming to tilt beneath me. "You're uninvited me from your own wedding." The silence on the other end stretched, punctuated only by the faint hum of the refrigerator in the background. Then Sophia's voice, clipped and tight, broke through. "Mom, it's not that dramatic. We want things to be relaxed, stress-free." I gripped the counter, knuckles white. "Relaxed?" My voice cracked. "Sophia, I've been planning this wedding with you for a year. I've paid for most of it." Another silence. Then, "That's part of the problem, Mom. Part of the problem," I repeated, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "What exactly does that mean?" Sophia sighed, a weary sound that grated on my already frayed nerves. "Look," she began, her tone softening slightly. "You know I love you, but you get so involved. Remember Aunt Carol's birthday? You rearranged all the centerpieces because you didn't like the color scheme. And then there was Uncle David's retirement party. You practically took over the DJ's playlists." My heart sank. "Those were small things," I whispered, the image of the garish orange and purple flowers at Carol's party flashing through my mind. "I was just trying to help." "I know, Mom," Sophia replied, her voice laced with a mixture of exasperation and pity. "But it's my wedding, Marcus, and I want it to be us. We want it to be simple. And with you, well, things tend to escalate. You take over." I closed my eyes, picturing the spreadsheets I'd meticulously crafted, the vendor calls I'd painstakingly negotiated, the countless hours I'd poured into creating what I thought was Sophia's dream wedding. It had never occurred to me that she wouldn't want it. "So you're disinviting me," I stated flatly, the words heavy with disbelief. "Because I care too much." "It's not like that," Sophia protested, but her words lacked conviction. "We're just minimizing the guest list, keeping it intimate. Family only. And well, Marcus's family is quite large." The implication hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. My own daughter, prioritizing her fiance's family over her own mother. The thought stung, a sharp, bitter taste in my throat. "So I'm not considered family?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. There was another pause, a long one this time. Finally, Sophia spoke, her voice low and hesitant. "Mom, It's not about that. It's complicated. Complicated, I echoed. The word a hollow shell. Right. I stared blankly at the fruit bowl on the counter, a vibrant arrangement of oranges and bananas that suddenly seemed to mock my own emptiness. I had poured my heart and soul into this wedding, into my relationship with Sophia, and this was my reward. Banishment. Rejection. So I said, my voice regaining a semblance of composure. What about the rehearsal dinner? The bridesmaids' luncheon? I've already made all the arrangements. We'll handle those, Sophia replied, her voice strained. We'll have something small, just the bridal party. It's better that way. Better for whom? I wanted to scream, but the words caught in my throat. I knew arguing would be futile. Sophia had made up her mind. I was out. I see, I said quietly, the words laced with a bitterness I couldn't quite conceal. Well, then, I suppose I should go then. I didn't wait for Sophia's reply. I simply pressed the button, ending the call, the click of the disconnect echoing the hollowness in my chest. The phone slipped from my grasp, clattering onto the countertop. I stood there, frozen, the silence of the kitchen amplifying the roaring in my ears. All those years, all that sacrifice, working double shifts to pay for Sophia's dance classes, scrimping and saving for her college tuition, putting her needs above my own, always. And for what? To be cast aside, deemed too much, too involved, to me. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. I stumbled back, grabbing onto the edge of the kitchen table for support. Tears welled in my eyes, blurring my vision. I sank into a chair, my body trembling with the force of my emotions. This wasn't just about the wedding. This was about everything. My life, my choices, my identity. Who was I if not a mother? What was left of me if not my daughter? I sat there for a long time, the silence broken only by the occasional sniffle and the rhythmic ticking of the clock on the wall. The setting sun cast long shadows across the kitchen floor, painting the room in hues of orange and purple, a cruel reminder of the birthday party I had supposedly ruined. As the darkness deepened, a strange sense of calm began to settle over me. The tears stopped, the trembling subsided, and in the quiet stillness, a new thought emerged, a flicker of defiance in the face of despair. Maybe, just maybe, this was an opportunity, a chance to reclaim myself, to rediscover who I was beyond the label of mother, a chance to finally live my own life. The faintest hint of a smile touched my lips. Sophia wanted a simple wedding, fine. She could have it. I had other plans. Rain lashed against the kitchen window, blurring the already gray afternoon. The phone felt cold and slick in my hand, still echoing the hollow click of Sophia disconnecting. I need you to understand, Mom, she'd said, her voice tight and strained. This is my wedding. And well, it's better if you're not there for the ceremony. I traced the rim of my teacup, the ceramic cool against my fingertips. Better if I wasn't there. For my own daughter's wedding. The words stung, a dull ache spreading through my chest. Had it really come to this? I stared out at the rain-soaked garden, remembering Sophia as a child, her bright laughter echoing through the very same space. We'd planted those rose bushes together, her small hands struggling to grip the trowel. Now, those roses were blooming, a vibrant splash of color against the gray, and she was getting married, a milestone I wouldn't witness. "It's not that we don't love you, Mom," she'd rushed to add. But the words felt hollow, a band-aid over a deep wound. "It's just for everyone's sake." Who's everyone? Marcus and his family. Were they the ones who found me so inconvenient? A wave of exhaustion washed over me. I sank into the kitchen chair, the familiar wood pressing against my back. How many birthdays had I spent in this kitchen, baking Sophia's favorite vanilla cake, frosting it with painstaking care, creating elaborate decorations? How many school projects had we tackled at this very table, me patiently explaining fractions or helping her craft a diorama of the Amazon rainforest? How many tears had I dried? How many fears had I soothed in this very room? And now all those years, all that love, all that sacrifice, it felt like it had amounted to nothing. "It's for the best," Sophia had murmured, the finality in her tone echoing in my ears. But for whom was it best? Certainly not for me. I closed my eyes. That image of her face, a mixture of guilt and determination, burned into my mind. Marcus and we just want a relaxed, stress-free day, she'd explained, her voice barely a whisper. Stress-free. Was I the source of stress? Was my presence, my love, somehow a burden? I wandered into the living room, the silence heavy and suffocating, the grand piano in the corner, a gift for Sophia on her 12th birthday, stood silent, a testament to unfulfilled dreams. She'd promised to practice every day, her eyes shining with ambition. I'd envisioned her performing at prestigious concert halls, her music filling the air, her talent captivating audiences. I'd even hired a renowned pianist to tutor her, driving her back and forth across town, juggling my own work schedule to accommodate her lessons. But the piano lessons dwindled, the ambition faded, replaced by other interests, other priorities. My gaze drifted to the bookshelf, packed with novels, biographies, and textbooks. I remembered the countless hours I'd spent reading to Sophia, nurturing her love of stories, encouraging her imagination to soar. We'd journeyed through Narnia together, explored the mysteries of Hogwarts, and sailed the high seas with pirates and adventurers. I'd envisioned her becoming a writer, a journalist, a storyteller, her words weaving magic and inspiring others. But that dream, too, had faded, replaced by the practicalities of college applications and career choices. I ran my hand over the smooth, worn cover of her favorite childhood book, a collection of fairy tales. Cinderella, Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, stories of princesses rescued by princes, of happy endings and happily ever afters. Had Sophia found her prince in Marcus? Was this her fairy tale ending? A life of blissful relaxation, free from the perceived stress of her own mother. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. What a fool I had been! I had poured my heart and soul into being a mother, into providing for Sophia, into supporting her dreams, even when those dreams shifted and changed like the tides. I had sacrificed my own aspiration, my own desires, to ensure her happiness, her success. And now I was being cast aside, deemed unworthy of witnessing the culmination of all those years of devotion. The rain continued to fall, a relentless drumming against the windows, mirroring the ache in my heart. I looked around the room, at the familiar furniture, the cherished photographs, the silent piano, the overflowing bookshelf. This house, this life, it was a testament to my love for Sophia, a monument to my motherhood. But now it felt empty, hollow, devoid of meaning. I walked over to the window, watching the raindrops race each other down the glass. Perhaps it was time to stop focusing on Sophia, to stop living my life through her. Perhaps it was time to rediscover myself, to pursue my own dreams, to create my own happiness. A flicker of resolve ignited within me, a small spark in the darkness. Sophia might not want me at her wedding, but that didn't mean my life was over. It just meant it was time for a new chapter. A chapter where I was the protagonist of my own story. And perhaps, just perhaps, that story would have a happy ending after all. A faint smile touched my lips. I had a feeling things were about to get interesting. Rain lashed against the window pane, mirroring the storm raging inside me. Sophia's words, "I don't want you at my wedding, Mom," echoed in the hollow spaces of my heart. I curled up on the sofa, the plush cushions offering no comfort. How could she, after everything I'd done for her? The thought sent a fresh wave of pain through me. My mind drifted, a kaleidoscope of memories flickering before my eyes. Sophia, a tiny bundle of joy wrapped in a pink blanket. "She's perfect, Ruby," my husband, David, had whispered, his eyes shining with pride. He'd been so happy. He'd left too soon. An accident, they said. Sudden, leaving me alone to raise our precious girl. "Mommy, can we get ice cream?" Little Sophia, her pigtails bouncing, tugged at my hand. We were at the grocery store, and I'd already carefully budgeted our week's expenses. "Not today, sweetheart," I said gently. "Mommy's saving up for something special." That something special was the beautiful, hand-embroidered dress Sophia wore for her first school play. She played a fairy, her face glowing with excitement. "I'm the prettiest fairy, Mommy," she'd exclaimed after the performance, her small hand clutching mine tightly. I smiled, remembering the hours I'd spent hunched over the sewing machine, my fingers aching, but my heart full. Then there was high school. Sophia wanted to join the cheerleading squad, but the uniforms were expensive. I picked up extra shifts at the diner, my feet throbbing after hours on end. The smell of greasy food clung to my clothes, but the thought of Sophia's happy face spurred me on. "You made the team, Mom," she cried, throwing her arms around me. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." I hugged her tight, the exhaustion fading away in the warmth of her embrace. College applications were a nightmare. Sophia set her sights on a prestigious university, one I knew was beyond our means. "Don't worry, Mom," she'd said confidently. "I'll get a scholarship." But even with a scholarship, the tuition was daunting. I sold my grandmother's antique necklace, a piece I'd cherished for years. It was a painful sacrifice, but seeing Sophia accepted into her dream school made it worthwhile. "I can't believe it, Mom," she'd squealed, jumping up and down. "I'm going to be a lawyer." I watched her, my heart swelling with pride and a bittersweet ache. And now the wedding. Marcus, a charming young man from a good family, had proposed to Sophia last Christmas. "He's the one, Mom," she'd whispered, her eyes shining with love. I was happy for her. Truly I was. But the wedding planning had been challenging. Sophia had grand ideas, visions of a lavish affair that were far beyond my modest budget. Mom, I want a string quartet, and a 5-tiered cake, and a dress flown in from Italy. She'd shown me pictures, her voice brimming with excitement. I'd nodded, my stomach twisting with anxiety. We'll see, sweetheart, I'd said, trying to sound optimistic. Behind the scenes, I'd been working tirelessly. I took on a second job, cleaning houses in the evenings. My days were a blur of exhaustion, my hands chapped and raw from scrubbing floors. I'd emptied my savings account and even borrowed money from a friend, all so Sophia could have her dream wedding. "It's all coming together beautifully, Mom," she'd said one afternoon, showing me the invitations. Elegant, embossed with gold lettering. My name wasn't on them. "Marcus's family is contributing quite a bit," she explained, her voice carefully neutral. "They think it's best if you just attend the reception." I'd stared at her, speechless. All those sleepless nights, all the sacrifices for this, they think I'm embarrassing. I finally managed to ask, my voice trembling. Sophia looked away, her cheeks flushed. "They just want a relaxed, intimate ceremony, Mom." She hadn't met my gaze. Now, sitting here alone in the dimly lit living room, the rain still drumming against the glass, I felt a profound emptiness. It wasn't just the wedding. It was the realization that all my years of self-sacrifice, of putting Sophia's needs before my own, had led to this, to being cast aside, deemed unworthy of witnessing my own daughter's most important moment. A quiet resolve began to solidify within me, a tiny spark in the darkness. I wiped away the tears, a strange calmness settling over me. Maybe it was time to stop living for Sophia and start living for myself. Maybe it was time for something different. The thought hung in the air, a promise of change, of reclaiming what I'd lost. The afternoon sun slanted through the kitchen window, painting stripes across the checkered floor. I stared at the dust motes dancing in the golden light, numb. Earlier that day, my own daughter, Sophia, had uninvited me from her wedding. "It's for the best, Mom," she'd said, her voice tight. "You just stress me out, Marcus, and I want a relaxed day. Relaxed, without me, the woman who'd poured her heart, soul, and let's be honest, her savings account into making that wedding happen." "But the flowers," I stammered, thinking of the cascading orchids Sophia had insisted upon, the ones I'd secretly remortgaged a portion of my house to afford. The venue, the caterer. Sophia just shook her head, a strand of perfectly highlighted hair falling across her face. "We've scaled things back," she'd said softly, a dismissal disguised as kindness. "It's simpler now. Simpler, cheaper. Without me." I finally pushed myself away from the table, the untouched cup of tea cold in my hand. The silence of the house pressed in, amplifying the hollowness in my chest. I wandered into the living room, my gaze drifting over the framed photos on the mantelpiece. Sophia as a toddler, her chubby cheeks smeared with chocolate. Sophia grinning gap-toothed in her soccer uniform. Sophia radiant in her graduation gown. In almost every photo, I was there, a constant presence at her side. And now I was supposed to vanish, become invisible, just step aside and let her have her relaxed wedding without the woman who had dedicated her life to her happiness. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. Happiness. Whose happiness had I ever truly considered my own? My life had become so intertwined with Sophia's that I'd lost sight of myself somewhere along the way. I'd sacrificed my dreams, my career, my own chance at love, all to ensure she had everything she ever wanted. And what was the result? A daughter who saw me as a source of stress, an obstacle to her perfect day. I ran a hand through my hair, feeling the familiar sting of unshed tears. No, I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't let her see how much she'd hurt me. This wasn't about her anymore. This was about me. About reclaiming my life, my identity, my own damn happiness. I walked over to the bookshelf and pulled out a dusty photo album. It was filled with pictures from my younger years, before Sophia, before I'd become mom. There I was, backpacking through Europe, my face tanned and carefree. There I was, laughing with friends at a beach bonfire, the firelight reflecting in my eyes. There I was, full of life, full of dreams, full of myself. A spark ignited within me, a flicker of defiance in the face of rejection. Sophia wanted a wedding without me, fine. I'd give her one. I'd give her a wedding she'd never forget. Not by causing a scene, not by begging for an invitation back. No, my revenge would be far more subtle, far more potent. I would disappear not just from her wedding, but from her life, at least for a while. I would rediscover the woman I used to be, the woman I'd buried beneath layers of maternal obligation. I spent the rest of the afternoon going through old boxes, unearthing forgotten passions and dreams. I found my sketchbooks, filled with charcoal drawings and watercolor landscapes. I found my travel journals, their pages filled with scribbled notes and faded photographs. I found my yoga mat, rolled up and forgotten in the back of a closet. Each item I unearthed felt like a piece of myself I was reclaiming, a fragment of my identity I was piecing back together. As the evening drew in, I made a decision. I wouldn't attend Sophia's scaled-back wedding. I wouldn't even be in the country. I booked a one-way ticket to Bali. I'd always dreamed of visiting the rice paddies, the ancient temples, the volcanic beaches. Now, I was finally going to do it, alone, on my own terms. I packed a suitcase, filling it with light clothes, comfortable shoes, and my art supplies. I didn't pack any photos of Sophia. I didn't want to be reminded of the hurt, the rejection. This trip wasn't about escaping her. It was about finding myself. As I closed the suitcase, a sense of calm washed over me, a quiet resolve that had nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with self-preservation. Sophia might think she was punishing me by excluding me from her wedding, but in reality, she was setting me free, free to rediscover my passions, my purpose, my own unique brand of happiness. And that, I realized, was the most exquisite revenge of all. The silence of the house no longer felt oppressive. It felt expectant, like the quiet before the dawn of a new beginning, a beginning that, for the first time in a long time, was entirely my own. I had a feeling this trip would be more than just a vacation. It would be a transformation, and I couldn't wait to see who I would become. Rain lashed against the window pane, mirroring the storm that had raged inside me for weeks. "You're too much, Mom," Sophia had said, her voice tight with a finality that still echoed in my ears. "We want a simple wedding without drama." That drama, of course, was me. I closed my laptop. The travel blog I'd been trying to read blurring into a meaningless wash of color. Sophia's wedding, my daughter's wedding, was happening in just a few short months, and I wasn't even invited to the ceremony. I'd poured my heart, soul, and yes, a substantial portion of my savings into making her dream a reality, only to be told I was too much. But enough was enough. The rain outside seemed to cleanse the air, washing away the lingering resentment. It was time. The next morning, I woke with a strange sense of calm. The heavy weight that had been pressing down on me for weeks seemed to have lifted. I made myself a cup of strong coffee and sat on the porch, watching the sunrise paint the sky in vibrant hues. This was the first morning in a long time that I hadn't woken up thinking about Sophia, about the wedding, about how to mend what felt irreparably broken. It was liberating. "It's time for me," I whispered to the rising sun. That day, I did something I hadn't done in years. I booked a trip, not for Sophia, not for anyone else, just for me. I'd always dreamed of visiting Italy, of wandering through the cobbled streets of Rome, of standing in awe beneath Michelangelo's David. "First class, please," I told the travel agent, a small smile playing on my lips. "And I'd like a suite overlooking the Trevi Fountain, if possible." The agent, a young woman with bright, curious eyes, looked at me with surprise. "That sounds wonderful," she said, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "It is," I agreed, a genuine smile finally breaking through. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. I booked cooking classes in Tuscany, wine tasting tours in Chianti, and a private gondola ride in Venice. I've always wanted to learn how to make authentic pasta. I confessed to the chef during my first cooking class, my hands clumsily attempting to knead the dough. He chuckled, his eyes twinkling. "Patience, Signora," he said, gently correcting my grip. "It takes time and practice, just like everything else in life." His words resonated with me, a quiet truth settling in my heart. I spent hours wandering through museums, marveling at the masterpieces that had stood the test of time. I sat in quiet cafes, sipping espresso and watching the world go by. "Buongiorno." I'd greet the baristas each morning, my Italian improving with each passing day. They'd respond with warm smiles, making me feel like I belonged, even in this foreign land. I was rediscovering a part of myself that had been dormant for so long, buried beneath layers of responsibility and self-sacrifice. One evening, while strolling along the Arno River in Florence, I came across a small artisan shop filled with exquisite leather goods. "This is beautiful," I murmured, tracing my fingers over a handcrafted handbag, the soft leather supple beneath my touch. "It's Florentine leather," Sigmar, the shopkeeper, a wizened old man with kind eyes, explained. "The finest in the world." "I'll take it," I decided impulsively, a surge of something akin to rebellion coursing through me. For years, I'd scrimped and saved, putting everyone else's needs before my own. Now, I was finally allowing myself to indulge, to experience the simple pleasure of buying something beautiful just for me. The days melted into weeks, and soon it was time to return home. As the plane touched down, I felt a pang of apprehension. Had anything changed? Would Sophia still be angry? But the apprehension quickly faded, replaced by a newfound sense of peace. I had changed. I was no longer the woman who had pleaded with her daughter to be included in her wedding. I was stronger, more confident, The taxi pulled up to my house, and I stepped out, taking a deep breath of the familiar air. There, on my doorstep, was a large package. Confused, I picked it up. It was addressed to me from a luxury travel agency I'd never heard of. Curiously, I tore open the packaging. Inside was a brochure for a luxurious, all-inclusive cruise around the Greek islands, departing in just a few weeks. Tucked inside the brochure was a handwritten note. "Mom," it read, in Sophia's familiar handwriting. "I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I hope this makes up for it. Love, Sophia." Beneath Sophia's note was another, smaller one. "I'm sorry too." It read simply, signed Marcus. My heart swelled with a mixture of emotions: relief, forgiveness, and a quiet sense of triumph. The cruise wasn't just a trip. It was a symbol of my daughter's apology. Yes, but more importantly, a symbol of my own rediscovered independence. My revenge, it seemed, was sweeter than I could have ever imagined. It was the sweet taste of freedom, and it had just begun. The fairy lights twinkled across the sprawling backyard of Marcus's parents' house, casting a warm glow on the wedding reception. I smoothed down my emerald green dress, the color of renewal, a far cry from the muted pastels I usually favored. A waiter offered me a glass of champagne. "Thank you," I said, taking a delicate sip. The bubbly tickled my nose, a pleasant contrast to the lump that had been lodged in my throat for weeks. Weeks spent questioning everything, reevaluating my entire life after Sophia told me, point blank, that my presence at her wedding ceremony would be too stressful. Too stressful for whom? Exactly. I hadn't dared to ask. The answer was clear enough. I surveyed the scene, a familiar pang of bittersweet nostalgia hitting me. These were the same fairy lights, the same caterers, the same meticulously chosen floral arrangements I'd painstakingly researched and booked. Sophia had simply transferred the entire reception lock, stock, and barrel from the elegant venue I'd secured to her in-law's backyard. Saving money, Marcus had explained with a shrug when I'd finally managed to get him on the phone. Keeping it simple, Sophia had echoed when I'd confronted her, her voice tight with a forced casualness. Simple, right. I took another sip of champagne, letting the effervescence settle my nerves. Tonight wasn't about them. It was about me, about reclaiming my life, my joy, my very sense of self. I'd spent the last 2 decades pouring myself into Sophia, molding my world around her needs and desires. Now that world had shrunk to the size of a pinprick, leaving me adrift in a sea of uncertainty. But in that vast, daunting expanse, I'd also discovered something unexpected. Freedom. A familiar melody drifted from the makeshift dance floor, a jazzy rendition of "Fly Me to the Moon." My song. The song Sophia and I used to dance to in the kitchen, twirling amongst the pots and pans, flour dusting our noses. I closed my eyes for a moment, a wave of tenderness washing over me. Then I opened them, a new resolve hardening my gaze. That Ruby, the woman who lived for those stolen moments with her daughter, was gone. She had been replaced by someone stronger, someone who understood that her worth wasn't contingent on her daughter's approval. A hand touched my arm. "Ruby, you made it." It was Marcus's father, Frank. He looked genuinely surprised, a flicker of unease in his eyes. "Sophia didn't think well. Never mind." He cleared his throat. "Glad to see you here." "Thank you, Frank," I replied, my voice calm and steady. I wouldn't miss it for the world, and I meant it. Not for them, for me. I spent the next hour mingling, chatting with distant relatives and acquaintances I hadn't seen in years. I complimented the bride's mother on her dress, a shimmering silver gown that, I noticed with a flicker of amusement, was strikingly similar to the one I'd suggested for Sophia. I even managed a brief, civil conversation with Marcus, who seemed surprised by my presence and even more surprised by my cheerful demeanor. He stammered something about Sophia being a bit stressed, but I simply smiled and steered the conversation towards his work. He relaxed visibly, clearly relieved that I wasn't going to make a scene. As the evening wore on, I noticed a shift in the atmosphere. Whispers followed me as I moved through the crowd. Curious glances, a mixture of confusion and admiration, lingered on my face. Sophia, I noticed, was watching me from across the lawn, her brow furrowed in a puzzled frown. Good. Let her wonder. Let her question. Let her see the woman I had become, a woman who no longer defined herself by her daughter's whims. During a lull in the music, I slipped away unnoticed, heading towards the side of the house where I'd parked my car. Inside, nestled on the passenger seat, was a small velvet box. Inside that box was a single key, the key to my new condo in Bali. I'd booked the flight that morning, a one-way ticket to paradise, a place where I could finally focus on myself, on rediscovering the passions I'd long neglected. Painting, yoga, learning to surf. A place where I could heal, grow, and finally, truly live. As I reached for the car door, a voice called out my name. It was Sophia. She stood a few feet away, her expression a mixture of uncertainty and was that regret. "Mom," she began, her voice hesitant. To just wanted to say. I turned to face her, a serene smile playing on my lips. "Yes, Sophia." She looked down at her hands, twisting her wedding ring nervously. "To hope you're having a good time." I am," I replied, my voice soft but firm. "A wonderful time." I reached for the car door handle. "Mom, wait," she pleaded, her voice cracking. "I am sorry." I paused, my hand hovering over the cool metal. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not the petulant child who had banished me from her wedding, but a young woman, overwhelmed by the weight of her own choices. I felt a surge of empathy, a flicker of the old maternal instinct to comfort and protect. But this time, I held back. This time, my love would take a different form. "Sophia," I said, my voice gentle but unwavering, "I think it's time I started living my own life." And with that, I opened the car door, slid into the driver's seat, and drove away, leaving the twinkling fairy lights and the muffled music of the wedding reception behind me. The Balinese sunrise awaited. The crisp winter air nipped at my cheeks as I stepped out of the Parisian cafe, a warmth spreading through me that had nothing to do with the steaming cup of chocolate show I'd just finished. It had been 2 years since Sophia's wedding, 2 years since I'd last spoken to her, 2 years since the sting of "Mom, I don't want you at the wedding" echoed in my ears. 2 years since the world I thought I knew crumbled around me. Now, here I was, thousands of miles away, breathing in the crisp air of a new life. I tucked a stray strand of silver hair behind my ear, the Persian wind swirling the rich scent of roasted chestnuts around me. A street musician played a lively rendition of Lo-Fi and Rose, and I smiled, a genuine smile that reached my eyes. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly free. Another chocolate show, Madame Coleman, the waiter asked, his voice a warm rumble. No, thank you, Jean-Pierre, I replied, gathering my things. I have a gallery opening to attend. He winked. Oh, Madame's art is the talk of the Marais, a masterpiece. Just like the artist herself, his words warmed me more than the hot chocolate ever could. I'd always dabbled in painting, a quiet passion I squeezed in between work and catering to Sophia's every whim. Now, it was my life, my apartment, a charming little space overlooking a flower market, doubled as my studio. The walls were splashed with vibrant colors, a stark contrast to the muted beige of my old life. The gallery was buzzing with people, their voices a low hum against the soft jazz playing in the background. My paintings, bold and abstract, hung proudly on the walls, each one a piece of my rediscovered self. I spotted a familiar face among the crowd, a distinguished gentleman with silver hair and kind eyes, Henry, a fellow artist I'd met at a workshop. Ruby, magnificent, he exclaimed, kissing me on both cheeks. These are breathtaking. You've truly captured the essence of Paris. Thank you, Henry, I said, a blush warming my cheeks. It's all thanks to Paris capturing me. We chatted about art, about life, about the beauty of starting over. He complimented my latest piece, a swirling explosion of blues and greens that represented the tumultuous journey I'd taken to find myself. It was the piece I was most proud of. Later that evening, after the gallery closed, Henry and I strolled along the Seine, the city lights twinkling like fallen stars on the water. He told me about his upcoming exhibition in Venice, his words filled with passion and excitement. I shared my dreams of exhibiting in New York, a city that once held painful memories, but now symbolized a new beginning. You should come to Venice, he said, his voice soft. It would be an honor to show you around. I would love that, I replied, a genuine thrill coursing through me as I stood there, bathed in the soft glow of the city lights. I thought about Sophia. I wondered if she was happy, if she ever thought about me. I hadn't heard from her since the wedding, not a single word. I knew deep down that I had made the right decision by not fighting her. I had chosen myself, my happiness, my own life, and in doing so, I had found a freedom I never knew existed. The next morning, I woke to the sound of church bells and the scent of freshly baked bread wafting in from the boulangerie below. I pulled on a warm sweater and headed out for my morning croissant and coffee, a simple ritual that had become a cherished part of my new life. As I sipped my coffee, I noticed a familiar American newspaper at the newsstand. The headline screamed Marcus Industries files for bankruptcy. Marcus, Sophia's husband, the man who had looked down his nose at me, the man who had supported Sophia's decision to exclude me from her wedding. I picked up the paper, my heart pounding in my chest. The article detailed the spectacular downfall of Marcus's family business, a business built on shaky foundations, and questionable practices. Everything they had, the lavish lifestyle they flaunted, was gone. A wave of something washed over me, not quite satisfaction, not exactly revenge. It was something closer to pity, tinged with a hint of vindication. I thought of Sophia, of the life she had chosen, the life built on the shifting sands of someone else's fortune. I felt a pang of sadness for her, for the daughter I once knew, the daughter who had pushed me away. I folded the newspaper and tucked it under my arm, a strange sense of peace settling over me. The sun was shining. The air was crisp and clean, and the city was alive with the promise of a new day. I had my art, my friends, my life, and that, I realized, was more valuable than any wedding invitation, any forced reconciliation, any semblance of the life I thought I was supposed to have. I walked on, the Parisian streets stretching before me, a blank canvas waiting to be filled with the colors of my own making. I had found my revenge, not in bitterness or retaliation, but in the quiet triumph of living my own life on my own terms. And that, I knew, was a masterpiece worth more than all the gold in the world.